Good afternoon. My name is Peter Skinner. I'm the president of the Rotary Club in Cannery Row. On behalf of the Rotary and the Communities for Sustainable Monterey County, we would like to welcome you and thank you very much for coming out tonight, this afternoon. This is an important topic, and we thought it would be interesting to the community, but this has really been a fantastic turnout, so we're very, very happy that this is that you all have come. For those of you who are unfamiliar with our two organizations, the Rotary and the Communities for Sustainable Monterey County, I'm just going to leave you with two very short descriptions. And that is, the Rotary is a network of 1.4 million people in over 200 countries around the globe. People who are dedicated to making the world a better place. In Cannery Row, we do public service projects that are either local or international, and with an emphasis on the environment. The Communities for Sustainable Monterey County operates through a group of local action groups to advance sustainability initiatives in every major city or community in Monterey County. So we invite you to learn more about us, both of our organizations. Please contact any one of us, come ask us questions. We'd love to get to know you, and we would love to have you join us and get involved in the initiatives that we collectively are pursuing. Before I go any further, we would like to pay our respects to the traditional custodians of this land on which we're meeting here today. To do that, I will read the CSUMB Land Acknowledgement Statement. California State University, Monterey Bay resides on the indigenous homeland of the Esselen people, also known as the Carmeleno, Monterey Band, and Rumsen. It is on the rich homeland of the Esselen, where CSUMB not only thrives as an institution of higher education, but also provides an education abundant with service and experience to a diverse community. As our students, staff, faculty, alumni, and community members explore the university's campus, please remember to respect the land and take note of the natural beauty. Remember that ancestors rest below the pathways and in other less traveled areas on campus. We are here, let kalai. We would like to thank the CSUMB Office of Sustainability for making this space available to us tonight. So I'd also like to thank all of the people who have made this event possible today, and that includes many volunteers who have sweated over the details, and also the generous local businesses, public agencies, and individuals who have helped underwrite this talk today, and also the continued work of our two organizations. We would also like to give special thanks to our two presenting sponsors today. That is Regen Monterey and Hayward Lumber. Thank you. These are two organizations I'm sure you know. They have deep roots in our community and long histories working to make Monterey County a better, more sustainable place for us to live. Beyond the financial support, however, we're especially interested in being able to partner with these organizations going forward to make sure that we can help advance initiatives that can help turn the tide on the climate crisis here in Monterey. So you will hear from both of these organizations, from representatives of these two organizations tonight, and we're going to start with Bill Hayward. Bill is the executive Chairman and the Chief Sustainability Officer for Hayward Lumber. Hayward has operated for over 100 years in our community, and through Bill's efforts, Hayward has become a leader in the industry, providing solutions for building healthy, durable, and energy-efficient homes. In addition, Bill has been a thoughtful and effective advocate promoting responsible forestry practices through his role in the Forest Stewardship Council. So we've asked Bill tonight to introduce our keynote speaker, Paul Hawken. And so I'd ask you to please give a warm welcome to Bill Hayward.
Well, it's an honor to stand in a full room of people who care about sustainability. Thank you. So, up until November, I was CEO of Hayward. Now, Mark Muskorsky is our CEO. But in my journey, back at the age of 35, I was learning to pronounce the word sustainability. Actually, I'd never heard of it before. And we thought customers actually cared a bit about these topics, so we started to research and understand what sustainably supplied building materials would be. And in the process, I was handed a book called A Mid-Course Correction. And in this book by Ray Anderson about interface carpet was this dream team, of which Paul Hawken was one of the members. And I thought to myself as I read it, someday I want to meet that guy. So here's one of the first books I've read, and I've met almost all of them, been on stage with them, over half of them, and done a lot of work with them. So lumber building materials, our locations are from Santa Barbara to Redwood City, and we sell a lot of wood, and it would be considered an extractive business. But in the process of thinking about what that meant and becoming a leader in sustainability, we started to change. We were the first lumber company in the country to stock and sell FSC certified lumber as an option. As was noted, I became chairman of the board of that organization. We had an EnviroSmart product. We were the first truss plant to be solar powered. We really tried to push down that journey. At one point, we wrote our environmental statement, which said, we recognize the opportunity, accept the responsibility, and will lead the journey to environmental stewardship. And we've been noted in magazines and other things in the country, but we haven't done enough. We faltered along the way when the recession hit. We're energizing that commitment back up the hill. But one of the things that I observed in the world of sustainability and these books that people like Paul wrote was when business leaders recognize the compelling economic opportunities of sustainability, they can move more people and more resources than nonprofits and governments can ever dream of. And so as time passed, 20 years ago, not many people in Monterey County cared about sustainability, but today it's changed. People really care. And as we saw that, and as we saw one of the lessons of COVID, we said to ourselves, wow, government's really not designed to move as fast as we need to move for a crisis. So we conceived of this idea of creating a new public-private nonprofit partnership that we call Regenerative Monterey. And we got the sectors of hospitality, construction, blue economy, and agriculture together to help fund the launch of an initial business plan for Regenerative Monterey, and that's been done. And through the listening sessions, we learned that by working together, there were common problems across all those sectors that held us back from creating the first regenerative economy in the state of California to be the exemplar for the entire state and to help move the state. And what we learned from the construction standpoint, and that's the story I'm most familiar with, is that every sector needed affordable housing. Healthy, durable, energy-efficient, affordable housing. And without that, the commutes are too long, the cost of energy is too high, we don't have places to live. So that turned out to be something Hayward had been working on for 2 decades. And just recently, you may have seen in the news at Rancho Cielo just won a competition against the major universities. I coached those kids at one of the most honorable and rewarding things I've ever done, but they used all of the techniques and processes that we have been working on at Hayward to create that house which won. So here it is. We've brought it back to Monterey for Monterey as the exemplar for how sustainable, energy-efficient, affordable housing can be done and replicated in the county. One of the other things of low-hanging fruit was red tape, bureaucracy, right? No matter which organization, Blue Economy, Oceans, trying to do the right thing, there was a lot of red tape. So these are some of the initiatives that Regenerative Monterey will work on. And what happens when we get construction and multiple segments together, we're all of a sudden advocating for what's best for Monterey County. We're not advocating for construction and then advocating over here for Blue Economy and over here for ag. When we bring these things together and saying this is how our local economy can move forward, we're advocating together for what's best for us and those of us who care about regeneration. So it's an exciting initiative. I want to take a minute and introduce it. Regenerative Monterey. Kristen Coates, our executive director, is in the audience right there. And more to follow. It's morphed now from Regenerative Monterey to Regenerative California. We've had so many other communities want to be part of it. But the pilot project, where we're starting, is in Monterey to set the example for California. And according to Leon Panetta, if we can do it in California, he will take it to the capital. So that's kind of exciting. Creating healthy housing for the kids at Rancho Cielo was personal because they said, you know, we don't live in the best neighborhoods. The air is not very good here. There's a lot of pollutants. There's a lot of problems. And seeing them inside this house, they could see their life in that house. It was affordable, it was accessible, and it was a beautiful experience. And so this idea of bringing that home and then touching so many lives by making it affordable, reducing the commutes, reducing healthcare costs, no energy bill. These kids said to me, wow, if my family had $3,000 more a year, that would mean everything, right? And that's a typical energy bill. So pretty exciting. The next thing that really I want to do is introduce Paul Hawkins. He doesn't really need an introduction, but I think of him as architect, fact finder, and entrepreneur. He's an architect of sustainability. He's mapped the path. He's mapped the territories. He's found the resources. He knows how they fit together. He's built businesses that use these processes to become more successful and more profitable. He's the author of many books. He's one of my heroes. And he is here tonight to help us think. So I was asked to seed because he would like you guys to ask some questions. So questions. One of the things, the challenge of all these things is, wow, it's a big problem and it's scary. A question I would ask is, how do I become part of the solution? Because we all feel better if we're part of the solution. How do I get my management team to believe in this and come along with me? How does my business do it and remain profitable and take care of our people? How do I make a difference personally? So think about questions you might want to ask on behalf of your business, on your own personal values, your family, the state. These are big problems, but they're solvable. And through Project Drawdown, which Paul has put together, he's really mapped the solutions and the technology so that we don't have to guess at what makes sense and what doesn't. It's there in his work to try and pick and choose from. So with that, well, I think we'll bring Paul in.
Doesn't get much better than that, I'll tell you. I want to say I did not know that there would be a land acknowledgement, so I wrote one. And I want to share part of it because I think it was left out of the CSUMB acknowledgement. Okay, I hear you. I'll speak louder. And we pay our respects to the elders, past and present. And acknowledge that we meet, though, on unceded land from the tribes that Bill talked about, or that Peter talked about. And that these lands were taken from the inhabitants without compensation, without consent, and in one case with a treaty that the United States never honored, with the Ohlone. I also, though, want to congratulate all of the tribes people, the organizations, the government, officials, citizens, you, for recognizing the justice of the land back movement and the return of Sargento Rook to the Ohlone. That's an extraordinary thing that happened here. And everyone deserves praise for coming together and supporting that. So thank you. And thank you for inviting me. I just want to say Monterey has meant a lot to me in my life. A big part of my childhood was spent in Berkeley, but my father was a photographer, and we came here all the time. He studied with Ansel Adams. He knew Edward Weston, and I never met, he knew, not Ed Weston, he knew Brett Weston, and we never met Edward Weston, that's so true. But I was so influenced, and every time we went to Point Lobos and tried to take a photograph that was as good as Ansel Adams, and of course we never did. But in my misspent youth, which was considerable, I was telling Bill, he said, the Rancho Cielo was built with children at risk, or so-called people, or young men at risk, or women too. And I said, well, that was me too. I was definitely at risk. And so one of the things I did during that time is I raced motorcycles. And the track we loved the most was Laguna Seca. Oh, yeah. In fact, it was the last racetrack I ever raced on. And those who have been to the track know that, the distance between the starting line and, the start and turn one is considerable. And by the time I got there on this this race, I was going at least 90 miles an hour before a bike in front of me slid. And that's when you're on an angle, you can lose your traction. And it hit mine, and boom, I was in the air. And it seemed like a long, long time. Do you know what I'm talking about? It's like time stops. I was looking at the clouds and, people, and it was a beautiful day. And saying, I wonder if I'll land. I wonder how this is going to work out. And I tell you, I pretty much decided then what I wanted to do for the rest of my life, and it wasn't breathing exhaust from somebody else's motorcycle in front of me. And really, that's what had happened. And I had grown up in Berkeley, around the Sierra Club, around David Brower, around people head of the Sierra Club, rock climbing, doing this, hiking in Yosemite, etc., coming here, Ventana Wilderness. I mean, these are all part of my childhood and upbringing. And so I knew that I wanted to devote the rest of my life to nature, to the living world. And that was it. It was just obvious to me. And so everything that Bill shared in the books and what I've tried to do is try to work with the institutions that were actually most resistant, actually, to nature, which is the corporate world, no question about it. I was always an environmentalist. In 2001, the IPCC, the third assessment came out, each one more successively pessimistic and dire than the prior one, of course, we know that. And the IPCC assessments are consensus science, and so that should stop you right in your tracks right there. There's no such thing as consensus science. That's bad science. That means the Saudi Arabians, that means the Venezuelans, that means America, that means the Russians, that actually worked with the wording of the IPCC to tamp it down in terms of its import, really, and the warnings and cautions that came from that. And at that time, 9/11 happened, 2001, at the same time, and you knew, I'm sure all of you knew, the world has changed. How, we didn't know then, but it was fundamentally had changed, just like I think the Israeli Gaza Hamas war has changed the world irrevocably, but we don't know how. But we just all feel that. You felt that in 2001. And so at that time, I went around talking to NGOs, to universities, to institutions, and said, can we please have a list of solutions, please. I don't know what to do, and I don't know anybody else who knows what to do either. And at that time, there was, at Princeton, I don't remember the global wedges. These wedges, there's a pie, and there's 15 solutions, and there was only 1.5 that you and I could do, which is to drive less, and I forget the other half, and there was 12 that could only be instituted by the boards of directors of large multinational corporations, and every single one of them was financially under the water. In other words, and that means the boards of these companies would have to breach fiduciary duty in order to, and I thought, this isn't working for me, and I don't think it's working for anybody else. And at the same time, I felt like we weren't naming the goal. What's our goal? What's our purpose? And to me, like having net zero by 2050 or carbon neutral, these things, I'm going, that's not a goal by 2050. Maybe a threshold, but that's not a goal. The goal is to reverse global warming. That's the goal that makes sense. In other words, if you're going to do something, make a goal big. If you're going to do Monterey, do Regen Monterey. If you do Regen Monterey, do the whole state. Why not? I mean, have Leon, Panetta, and others. In other words, think that way, because much more can come out of that sense of scope in terms of creativity and connectivity than if you have small goals, right? And so to me, that was the goal. And like I said, I went around Carnegie Mellon, other, NRDC, Woof Woof, et cetera. Can we map, measure, model the 100 most substantive solutions to reversing global warming? And everybody said, great idea, we don't do that. And some of them said, why don't you do that? I said, if I knew how to do it, I wouldn't be talking to you, right? And in 2013, I decided to do it anyway because it had never been picked up. And this is like 12 years later, and I'm going, we still don't have a list. And so that was Project Drawdown. And what we did, we got 60 basically postdocs and researchers, from all over the world, every continent except Antarctica, and to work as researchers. So it was a collaborative effort from countries all over the world to find out what those solutions were, right? Because we really didn't know. And at that time, my staff went to Paris to the COP15, where the famous Paris Accord or Paris Agreement was signed, right? Remember? Mm-hmm. Only 2 countries have basically conformed to that agreement, by the way, Bhutan and Costa Rica. That's it. No other country has ever conformed to the agreement that was irrevocably made at that time. But we went around and we asked people. These were they weren't in the green zone. This is the blue zone. These are the people from the governments. These are the people who have the highest credentials. And we said, can you name the 5 top solutions to reversing global warming? Nobody came close. Be sure, we did not know either. But we were just curious to know if they thought they knew. And they were very forthcoming, like, no, we really don't know. It's like, you gotta be kidding. So they just voted to limit it to 2C at that time, no 1.5C centigrade. What is 1.5C to Americans? And like, not a lot. I did a thing on man on the street or person on the street and with a fake microphone and asked everybody, what does 1.5C mean to you? People looked at me like, they walked away. They wouldn't even answer in some cases, Nobody could say what it meant in terms of, Fahrenheit 2.7. Nobody could say. They didn't even know what it was. And so we're in a country, and you spoke to Bill, but I mean, the news is really hard to take with respect to the environment, respect to climate. I mean, we have literally 18 months to fulfill the Paris Agreement goals. 18 months. I mean, it's not going to happen, obviously. And they have, 15 trillion tons of carbon that we've added to the atmosphere. And direct air capture, which you've heard about, will take away, their goal is 100 gigatons by 2050. There's these massive, gaps, in what we're doing and what needs to be done. But, so I did draw down, published it, etc., But always in my mind, and it was shown, I mean, I have documents, the sequel was regeneration. And the reason for that is that we have, I think, with all due respect to the people who talk about carbon emissions and greenhouse gases and et cetera, a carbon tunnel syndrome. That somehow we think that if we get the carbon thing right, we're good to go. You get a hall pass to the 2100? No, you don't. And it's incredibly important that we do that. So I'm not dismissing those as a goal, not at all. But what we've done is reduce carbon to a thing, to an element. Like it was like what? A molecule, it's an atom, it's this, and that's not where we live. And in that narrowing of perspective, we have lost sight of this, the living world, where all the carbon is, right? And we've lost the sense that carbon is a flow of life. It's not a thing. And when you hear somebody talk about tackling and fighting and combating climate change, I mean, I used to go like that. Now I just giggle because climate is supposed to change. Hello, everybody. It's like, that's what it's here for. It's perfect. It can't be anything else but perfect. And it doesn't know what we think anyway. Right? But the real problem with that is that as soon as you use that language, what you've done is you've othered it. You've made it something else, somewhere that you have to fight, combat, tackle, whatever verb you want to use. And that is the cause of the dilemmas we are in the world today. We other people, gender, religions, places, animals, insects. I can go on and on. We are an othering civilization. No question about it. So when we think about regeneration, what does it mean? What does it mean? There's Regenerative Monterey. The word is used casually by many different companies now, and it's kind of a convenient marketing thing or adjective or whatever. That's fine. Sustainability was used that way as well in the beginning. But regeneration is about creating more life. And as you pointed out, you were in an extractive industry. Okay, right, you knew it. Very few companies actually know that. But we all grew up and in an economy, in a civilization, in a country that was entirely based on extraction as the basis for growth and wealth. That was taking life. And you either took a lot of it, or you took some and you tried to fix a little bit, but basically we live in an extractive economy. What the headlines, what the science, what we are feeling, what we're seeing, what we're witnessing is that road, which has brought us so much materiality, ends. We can see the end of that road now. It doesn't go much further. So regeneration is like, let's go the other way, because that's degeneration. Who wants to keep going to a degenerative future? Nobody. Even those who don't even know they're doing it don't want to go there. So regeneration is very much about a 180. And it doesn't mean we have the answers. It doesn't mean we know how to do that. Not at all. It means it's a question. And the most important thing we have and what we do is ask questions, not be know-it-alls. It's why. And why leads to how, and how leads to what. But first you have to ask the question, why? And why are we doing what we're doing? Why are we, there's 8.7 million creatures on Earth? We're the only one that destroys its habitat? What? Do we know that? And why us? And, and that's their habitat too. So it's not just ours, So this is an extraordinary moment, and I'm just so impressed by what you're doing here. I truly am. Where cities and a county together are basically committing to regeneration. And not just here, but in the sense of working with other communities, other counties to do the same thing. And what we know about life is, for one thing for sure, it only exists in community. There is no other life by itself. Individuals only exist in comic books and Westerns, okay? There's no such thing as an individual. Try it. It doesn't work. Every cell is a community. You have 5 trillion molecules in your cell, one cell. They're working together. And you have 40 trillion cells. So do the math. That's who we are. And every cell is regenerating right this second, or you wouldn't be hearing anything at all. So we are a walking, talking, breathing, loving example of regeneration every second of our life. It's the default mode of nature. And somehow, in our brilliance and on our Western deterministic science, that's objectified the world and separated into parts, we just figured out a way to actually not know what we know. And the thing about regeneration is it's innate. And regeneration to me, and when I talk to people in the back and listen to you and see what's going on in the rest of the world, regeneration is fundamentally about coming home. It's about coming home. Let's come home. And this is a home right here. It's called our heart. And every single person cares about something. Many people care about many things, but even just one thing. That is what the heart does. That is regeneration. So again, when we talk about regenerative Monterey, regenerative anything, or regenerative ag, or whatever, we're talking about coming home. And the fact is, working with the living world works better than trying to destroy it. And so again, it's not as though we have the answers and you should do this and shouldn't do that, or no, it's not about that at all. It's about, we have the questions and we have we know what our purpose is. Whether we're young, old, in between, it doesn't matter. We know what our purpose is. We know why we're here. And let's work together. Let's work together and learn and listen and so forth. When I was asked by an investment company, a socially responsible investment company in New York, and about regeneration, regenerative investing, and I said, that's not my bailiwick, I don't know that. And they said, well, give us some ideas. And I said, okay. So I wrote back to them 15 minutes later. That's not one of them, but so I wrote back to them 15 minutes later. I just scribbled out these 12 things. I'm just going to read them to you because they just came off the top of my head. But apparently, they were good enough for me they still exist today. Does the action create more life or reduce it? Good question. These are all questions. Does it heal the future or does it steal the future? And we're stealing the future from our children and our grandchildren. That's what we're doing, or somebody else's children and grandchildren. That's what we're doing. We're taking it. It's extraction. Does it enhance human well-being or diminish it? Does it prevent disease or profit from it? Does it create livelihoods or does it eliminate them? How do you spell AI? Okay. Does it restore land or does it degrade it? Right? Jill Clapperton, a really beautiful, wonderful soil scientist, said, when you're standing on the ground, you're standing on the roof of another world. It is so complex, so amazing what's down there. And what's so beautiful about, and I'm a science nerd, I'm not a scientist, I'm a journalist, but I read science incessantly. And what is so beautiful in the last decade and the last few years in science is we're discovering more and more that we don't know. That's so healthy and so wonderful, that it's a mystery. Like, we had no idea what's going on in our microbiome or in the soil and a lot of other places, and this is the thresholds we're at. And it's the basis for imagination and discovery, and as opposed to maybe the climate movement's rhetoric of reduce and, in a sense, feel curtailed. And that language has made us feel kind of like this and threatened and in fear, whereas regeneration actually does the opposite. Does it increase global warming or decrease it? That's an easy one. Does it serve human needs or manufacture human wants? I say, these are questions. Does it reduce poverty or expand it? Right? Does it promote fundamental human rights or deny them? Does it provide workers with purpose and dignity or demean them? And lastly, is it extractive or regenerative, right? So these are, to me, what I use in my work, and I do work with large corporations, and just always use these as a way of understanding a product or service or a specific aspect of a final product. The material, the sourcing, the people, the workers, the place, the land, and so on. And so, obviously, I can keep going. I would actually really do want to listen to questions. But some of the things I want to say, I think, will emerge from questions. And there's Kathy Rivera here somewhere. There she is. Thank you, Kathy, by the way, for Sustainable Seaside and for bringing us all together today and so forth. And she is the amazing roving microphone.
Actually, I have a couple of assistants.
Oh, two more? Oh, great. I don't all raise your hand all at once. Nobody wants to ask the first question.
Tom.
Thank you, Mr. Hawken, for coming here today. I'm a local permaculture farmer, and what I'm curious about is, it costs a lot of money, it's quite a lot of work, and it's quite difficult to produce a lot of the goods locally and to be able to bring them to market for people. There's a lot of loss, and it's quite difficult when people come up and are less than willing to spend the amount of money it actually costs for the goods that we're producing.
Yeah.
People are used to going to Whole Foods or going to Target and getting something that is out of season from quite a far place off and has had nothing but detriment to the soil it's removed from. What I'm curious about is how we change consumers' priorities and their willingness to spend money buying food that's actually good for them and supporting local farmers and local producers rather than going to places where it's going to be cheaper for them to obtain or to get goods that are not necessarily in season or grown locally.
What I love about most questions like that is they're actually statements. And I love the statement, by the way. It doesn't mean I have an answer to the question, but it does mean that I appreciate it. I would say that, oddly enough, our ally is weather, because it's going to become more disruptive. And commercial agriculture actually is not resilient. It can spend a lot of money to kind of overcome its lack of resiliency, but permaculture and regenerative agriculture, the true regenerative agriculture, is building resilience into the system, in terms of water, soil health, et cetera, et cetera. You know this better than anybody. So you're moving to, you have done already, but we need to move to a resilient system because the impacts of warming, and we saw them this year, like, oh my gosh, they're going to keep getting more severe over the decades to come. Nothing can stop that at this moment, not one single thing. It's baked in. So it seems to me that one of the things I felt and feel here is a sense of community. And so it really is about connection, and we're massively disconnected. And that disconnect, it comes to our wallet, and it manifests itself in, Good Earth flying in raspberries from Chile, stuff like that, and so there's an educational connection process here, which is that we need you. I think everybody here feels that. I don't think anybody doubts that. But then how can we be we, in the sense of access and support? One of the things, I just came back from Europe, which I saw, which I really loved, was that, especially in the UK, not in London, but in the countryside, I was visiting organic and regenerative farmers, is that cafe after cafe, after restaurant, after restaurant, after cafe, was talking about not just that they're buying locally, but from whom. In other words, the name of the farm. And this is in Bristol, this is in Cambridge, this is in, and I thought, gosh, we don't do that. I mean, I'm from California, and it's like, we should do that. No, we don't do it. I mean, I'm from Marin County. I mean, too much privilege in one place is not a good thing. Okay, and so that's why I would encourage you, and you have your compadres, you have your community here, and to really meet, talk about that. How can we make those connections stronger than they are right now? They're not strong enough for you, and I'm sure in terms of people's health, they're not strong enough for theirs either, if they're ending up buying a Target or someplace else. And again, it goes back to, yes, the reason extraction works so well, quote Marx, is because you externalize the real costs. So you're competing because you're internalizing the costs. There's no externalization to your workers, to the land, to the water, to erosion, to pollinators, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. That doesn't bother your competitors. And so that gap is what we have to fill, and I don't know how else to fill it except to be place-based. And so yeah, so thank you for what you're doing.
Hello, Mr. Hawken. Thank you for coming.